I've done many interviews since the late 70s when I started writing about jazz musicians and getting published. I've written for jazz magazines, newspapers, I've done liner notes, I've done some radio work, a lot of things, a lot of interviews, a lot of fascinating people. But at the top of my list for the strangest interview I've ever done is Jimmy Smith. Now let me say off the top here that I love Jimmy Smith's music. I've been listening to it for years. I mean, Jimmy Smith put the Hammond B3 on the map, made some fantastic recordings. I still listen almost daily to Flamingo with that incredible Lee Morgan trumpet solo. So when I was called by Verve Records in 1994 to do some extensive liner notes for a box set they were going to release of the classic Jimmy Smith, Oliver Nelson recordings from the 60s. Those great big band sessions that Oliver Nelson arranged. Walk on the Wild Side, Slaughter on 10th Avenue, I mean, some really classic things. I was really looking forward to doing that. I mean, I love to write about people that I like and music that I like. Makes it much easier. So I think it was Richard Seidel, who was running Verve at the time, or somebody over there, said, well, here's the contact information for Jimmy's wife, Lola. Call Lola and she'll set something up. At that time, Jimmy was living, I believe, in Northridge, California, and also running a club out there. So I called Lola, very nice woman, and she said that the best time to interview Jimmy would be in the morning, like around 11:30 or 12 o'clock, after he watched his Westerns. Okay, no problem. Happy to accommodate him. And also, since I was going to be writing about something that happened 30 years before, perhaps I could ask Jimmy, I could fax the questions to Jimmy so he could look at them beforehand, give me better answers. No problem. So I sat down and I must have given him 30 questions, because this was going to be a booklet in a CD package, not your typical liner notes. It's about being very comprehensive. And I had done a booklet a few years before for Mosaic Records, the Maynard Ferguson roulette recordings. I'll talk about that another time. That was also a very special project for me because I used to listen to those Maynard Ferguson roulette recordings when I was a kid. So anyway, faxed the questions to Jimmy and Lola, called at the appointed time, no answer. Okay, called her back, set up another appointment, called again, and Jimmy answered the phone. And he had kind of a raspy voice, like this, you know, kind of Miles Davis-ish. Yeah, what do you want? What the fuck's going on? I don't want to kill my throat, but that was the way Jimmy sounded. So, phone rings. Hello. Hi, Jimmy. This is Brett Premack. Who? I love that when that happens. Brett Premack, the writer. What? I'm calling about the project for the liner notes for the Verve box set. What the fuck? Pause. Your wife Lola set it up. Oh, he says, you're the motherfucker who sent me all those questions. I hate answering questions. Little pause in which I considered, well, maybe this is not going to be the most comprehensive interview I've ever done. But I've worked with temperamental people. I'll just go nice and easy and we'll see what happens here. I forget the questions, but something along the lines of, how did you get hooked up with Oliver Nelson? Something like that. You know what the problem with you white people is? You don't know how to ask a fucking question. If you would hang out with some niggers and learn how to talk, then you could ask a fucking question. Okay, pause. I asked another question. He answered it in 2 or 3 words. So I said, well, let me try, send a real softball here. What was it like working with Wes Montgomery? He says to me, if you ask me another question like that, I'm going to take your dick, cut it off, barbecue it, put some of my special sauce on it, and give it back to you eat and call it black and white ribs. Well, I laughed. I must have laughed for 2 minutes. I mean, it was kind of, in a way, the funniest thing I ever heard. I'd never been threatened with castration, let alone castration by a famous jazz musician over the telephone. So I found it to be kind of amusing. And after I stopped laughing, another pause. Next question. I said, no, man, that's it. I think I've got what I need. Thank you very much. I got off the phone. I called off my friends at Verve, explained what happened. They were very apologetic, so apologetic they actually paid me the entire fee and didn't have to write 1 word. Wow. And they signed it to a black writer. I guess maybe they thought it was a racial thing. Not uncommon for people of that generation to harbor certain negative feelings based on what had happened to them. I've met a number of bitter people who've directed some of their hostility towards me. I never took it personally, though, because I kind of knew where it was coming from. And also, in writing about this music and the musicians, I learned long ago to separate the music from the person. Because when I first came to New York and started hanging out in the kitchen of the Vanguard and with my eyes wide open, I quickly learned that the music is one thing, the people are another. You really have to separate that. So after I got off the phone with Verve, I found out that a couple weeks after that, Jimmy Smith got fired by Verve off of a tour. I think they had just released a recording called Angel Eyes, or that was a track on a recording that just stirs my memory. And they had sent him out on a tour and he got fired. And it turns out he got fired because he was insulting the audience from the bandstand, and he was insulting the guys in the band from the bandstand. So I found out that a friend of mine, Gary Bartz, was on the tour. And I called up Gary and I said, what's going on here? I explained to him what happened to me. He said, well, why do you think it was that Lola wanted you to talk to Jimmy in the morning after he watched his Westerns? And I thought for a minute. I said, alcohol. Yes. Our friend Jimmy Smith had a bit of a drinking problem. And once he had some drinks, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, his personality changed dramatically. And I never saw Jimmy Smith live, but I continued to listen to his music, and I'll always wonder